Dark Cloud 2. It's the sequel that we all anticipated, one that would surely help us explore the plot holes of the first game and maybe even tie up a few loose ends. A game that would give us more of what we loved from the original Dark Cloud and possibly expand upon the I'm sorry. It literally does none of that. You're so stupid. As always, we will be covering gameplay mechanics and parts of the story, so if you haven't played Dark Cloud 2 and you would like to go into it blind, then get out of here. Go play it. Then come back and watch this video. Oh wait. So what if I told you that Level 5 Inc., who developed Dark Cloud and Dark Cloud 2, was a part of one of the biggest lies ever told in video gaming history? You see, Dark Cloud 2 was originally called Dark Chronicle, which means it's only a spiritual successor and not an actual sequel to Dark Cloud 1. However, this game that released in 2002 for the PlayStation 2 still carries over majority of the core concepts from the original, whereas you must move through procedurally generated dungeons and find geostones, which can be used to restore towns by populating it with houses, trees, and other things. Since this game is not a direct sequel, we are introduced to all new characters except for a couple that make some cameos within the game. One by the genie in a late game dungeon, and the second cameo by the badass flying gunslinging Vivi knockoff Osmond. In Dark Cloud 2, you play as the two main characters, Max and Monica. Max's father is an independent man who don't need no woman, so we're introduced to Max as a curious young mechanic who wants to find out the mystery behind his mother's absence. Monica, on the other hand, narrowly escapes death as her father, King Raybrant, is killed by Gaspard. All of this is told to us right at the beginning, and similar to the first game, there is tons and tons and tons of exposition.
Gaspard! Remember me? It's Monica Raybrant.
Raybrant. Yes, you must be King Raybrant's girl. My, imagine that. Running into a princess in a place like this.
You tore my kingdom to bits and you murdered my father.
The plot is really average and simple, but it's told in so many words and multiple cutscenes that the game really drags on at times and probably turns many people off from giving the game a try in the first place. If you recall in my last video, this was the exact same issue I had with the first game. Don't get me wrong, the cutscenes do use in-game graphics and you can tell a ton of time was put into making them, but there's just so many and they're just so damn slow. It's like every time I go back to my hometown and I speak to someone I haven't talked to in forever. Oh, Kevin. Haven't seen you in forever. How you been, man? Oh, how have you been? Hey, man. Hey, bud. How have you been? Yeah, I'm good. I'm just visiting from. You're over in Austria, right? Nah, I'm in Australia. It's not Austria. Huh. You don't say. Yeah. Look, I should really be. Daryl. What? You'll never guess who's here. Tim? Nope. Tom? Nah.
Kevin?
No, I'm Kevin.
Who is it?
It's Wada.
Oh, from Austria?
It's Australia.
How has he been?
It's not even close to Austria. So what's it like over there in Austin? Yeah, you get the point. Anyways, the building and restoration system, which was by far my favorite part of the first game, has fortunately been carried over in Dark Cloud 2. It works fairly similarly, where you must first find the piece you want to build in the form of a geostone, which can be found in the dungeon of the current area you're in. Once you've explored enough of the dungeon and have enough geostones, you can then begin placing houses and other landmarks to build just the cutest little town you ever did see. Many of the towns will also have special requirements that are either given to you or sometimes hidden, but by meeting more of these requirements, you can gain more stat boosting items for your character, as well as weapons and other treasure. The system allows for plenty of creativity, so you can spend many hours trying to make your villages look half decent if that's your thing. I will say that I enjoyed the building in the first game more, not to say that this one is worse, but I just feel they didn't really expand upon it as much as I would like to see. For instance, giving us a reason to make the town look nice or to move around it would have made me want to spend more time there. I was basically just placing things to progress through the story, and then I never felt the need to return. Couple that with the fact that most of the characters were very basic, I just didn't care enough to revisit them. I mean, the history of White Bread has far more character development, and it's not even close. If each character had a developing story or perhaps sold items that you couldn't buy anywhere else, then it could have made for more unique towns. Instead, I just returned to the main town anytime I needed to stock up on items, which kept me from even remembering any of the characters. They do, however, have unique abilities that will grant you certain skills if they're in your party, so there's that. Moving on, probably the most notable upgrade from the first game has got to be the combat, and to be honest, it's not a high bar to meet. Even though it was a huge improvement, it's still one of the weakest facets of the game. Accidentally get a jumping attack when you wanted a normal one, you're gonna have a bad time. Accidentally flip backwards when you're trying to just change the camera angle, you're gonna have a bad time.
If you look down, you're gonna fall, you're gonna have a bad time.
Honestly, action combat is just not level 5's forte, and with the expansive dungeons and necessity to kill enemies to progress through the game, it can really draw out certain portions and turn it into a slog. I do like the ability to change between the two characters, and they both have their own playstyles. However, in the previous game you gained 6 playable characters, so this one feels there's a bit less choice. Max has the ability to switch to his ride pod, which can be upgraded throughout the game, and is a pretty cool addition. Monica can befriend monsters, and once she's done that, she can change back and forth between them. Unfortunately, the ride pod is pretty overpowered, and I found myself using this majority of the time with Max. Meanwhile, with Monica, I didn't even bother capturing most of the monsters, and I pretty much just used her original form. So I think the idea was there, the execution was just slightly off. Combat in general is just clunky, but fortunately, you can use long range and close range with each character. When you're fighting with melee combat, you can do 3-hit combos by mashing the attack button, or you can jump forward or evade backwards depending on the direction you hold. You can also pick up rocks to throw at enemies, and sometimes they have really cool hidden treasures inside of them. Long range combat allows you to charge a spell with Monica, while with Max, I unfortunately didn't even level his gun enough to really need to use it in the first place. Poor guy. Now, to be fair, most of us don't play these old school RPGs for the combat as long as there is good customization, which luckily Dark Cloud 2 has plenty of. Similar to the original game, there's a very in-depth weapon customization system for both characters, so rather than focusing on leveling the character, the majority of your time will be spent leveling up your weapons. By killing enemies, your weapon will gain experience and levels, which can then be used to spectrumize different abilities and even other weapons to make them stronger. Once specific conditions are met, you can then build up your weapons into a stronger version. While this weapon system allows for tons of customization and unique playthroughs, they all just take way too long to level. Pair that with having to find the right spears to upgrade your abilities, plus having to grind for experience and levels, I actually had more fun leveling weapons in the first game. However, if a weapon's durability goes to 0, you don't lose the weapon for good. Thank fuck. This game actually does look pretty good for a 2002 release. While the movements aren't as smooth to control, I can't fault the way the game looks. It does this cool cel-shaded effect similar to the Borderlands series, which personally I'm a huge fan of the art style, and it matches the quirkiness of the game, which makes some of the more Scooby-Doo-ish type of dialogue a little more bearable.
What? You're a guy?
I'll be waiting.
The soundtrack is okay. I wouldn't call it great, but it's exactly what you would expect from an RPG from the early 2000s. The different areas are pretty cool, variety of enemies is decent enough, and the game is worth the playthrough. You'll notice that there weren't too many spoilers given in this video, but that's because there wasn't much story to spoil. I mean, there was a lot of storytelling, there just wasn't much story to tell. You're basically on a journey to find Max's mom, who's in the future, and to chase down a bad guy, who's also in the future. He's in the past. Or no, he's in the past, but he controls the future. But he's also in the present, which is why we have to rebuild the future. Because it was destroyed in the past? The past where the bad guy is. Yeah. Meanwhile, the bad guy himself is just very not cool and kind of underwhelming. Some of the boss battles at the end, however, are hard as hell. I mean, they're seriously difficult and very monotonous. And the worst part about all of these old school RPGs, if you lose in one of the in-game fights, come on, say it with me, class. You have to watch all of these long ass cutscenes again. Yes, good job, Derek. Is Dark Cloud 2 a must play? Well, if you love old school RPGs and you have about 50 hours to spare, then you might just like it. If you want something a bit more fast-paced, I'd highly recommend one of the other RPGs that we've already done on the channel. But overall, I'm gonna give Dark Cloud 2 5 pasty, dry white bread slices out of 10. I want to give a special shout out, as always, to our Patreon members. I love you guys more than you know. And if you enjoyed this video, please have a look at our first Dark Cloud video, which you can watch here.